Oh, shit. Okay, so hopefully I think that this is working. Let's double check. Cool. So hopefully you guys can hear me, you can see me, and you can see my Twitter page. So what I'm gonna do, and I feel like in terms of getting out videos at the moment, because seem to be very, very busy on the weekends, because it seems to be when I'm trying to get in contact with all of my friends who have an 8-hour time difference, so I tend to be busy trying to speak to them over the weekend, so I don't actually have much time to edit videos. So I think what I'm doing at the moment is I think I'll just do it on live stream, because then that way I can just speak about something real quick, and then when I finish speaking, the video is already there on YouTube. I don't have to go through any time editing the video, and then you guys can leave any questions and let me know. So today I wanted to answer a question that was given to me by one of my friends, Adriana, on Twitter about listening. So if you have any other questions or anything else you want to ask me, then if you're in the live stream, then feel free to put it in the chat box and I'll try and respond. Or if you comment on the video or send me a message on Twitter or something, if you've anything you want me to talk about, then let me know and I can talk about that. So yeah. So anyway, Adriana says, what did you do to bridge the listening gap from going from simple conversations brackets normal speed, clear sounding, to full speed colloquial content? I'm finding this particularly difficult, and it will often take me at least 30 minutes to break down only 1 minute of audio. Your strategy? ? Okay. So that's the question. So let me just full screen my camera and then I'll go into it. So I guess the first thing that I wanted to talk about probably is that she's used the word normal speed. Actually, let me quickly send a Twitter out saying I'm streaming before I start to come hang out. Right, okay. So I've sent Twitter out. Anyway, I'll change the... Forgot to change the title of the video. Right. Okay, I've changed that. So yeah, so that was the question. So again from Andrew, and actually probably might be better if I leave it up. Sorry, this is my first time doing something like this in a while. So actually I'll leave the question up here for anyone new joining. So this is what I'm talking about, how to improve your listening skills. And I guess the first thing I'd want to mention is that she's said simple conversations brackets normal speed and clear sounding to full speed colloquial content. And when she says normal speed, I think what she means is like normal from like a beginner's book or courses and stuff like that. But I think for reference, in my head, colloquial content I would call the normal speed, and the simple conversations I would call a slowed down speed. So I think that's very clear in the fact that the only reason we think it's fast is because we're not used to it yet. So anyway, how would I improve my listening comprehension? I think basically I do a two-pronged approach, and I'll talk about that in a second. But quickly, I think I want to go over what a lot of people I think do wrong, because I think this might be useful, and then I'll go into what I think you can do to help it. So I think why beginners content and why courses like that and intermediate content and things with dialogues made for learners are very useful in the beginning. You can get you used to the sounds of the language, it can get used to the grammar, the structures, and get a general feel for what's going on. But I think in terms of listening skills, you're going to get used to slowed down content, and if that's all you listen to, when you jump into more authentic stuff, like natural speed or normal speed done by natives, then you're going to struggle a lot. So I think that's one of the mistakes that I think I see people do a lot. So I'm going to try and do an analogy. I don't really do analogies much on this channel, but I'll give it a go. So if you imagine that, you go back to the gladiator times, like however many years ago, and you've got gladiators training for a fight, and they're using wooden swords and wooden shields to fight, to train with, right? So they're going to get used to swinging the weight of the wooden sword. They're going to get used to the feel of the wooden sword in their hands. When they go to block, they're going to raise the shield up, and they're going to get used to the weight of the opponent's wooden sword crashing down on them. So they train like that for a few weeks, and then they go to the arena to fight, and they get given like steel swords and steel shields. That's heavy. So the problem with this is when they were training the entire time, they were using this very light wooden material. So when they go into real battle, they're using a sword that's too heavy that they're not used to, and they're using a shield that's too heavy that they're not used to. So if all they did was train with this light wooden material, when they go into actual battle, they're not going to be used to swinging a full weight sword, and they're probably going to get slayed in battle. So I think likewise, if you're training with a wooden sword, when you're listening to this slowed down content, you're not going to be used to the speed of full speed content. You're not going to be used to the weight of a steel sword. So you're going to struggle a lot when you get put into that context, and you'll probably find that you'll struggle a lot to understand what's going on, and that you're not going to be able to cope. So I think that's the first thing. Now, I do recommend doing some sort of beginner's course when you start off, but I think for me that's more of like a 1 to 2 to 3 months thing, and then after that I'll be very much trying to get into content made for native speakers that you find interesting, and I'll talk about how I'll do that in a second. So assuming you've got that far, you've gone through a beginner's book or two, and you've got a general feel of the language, you've got some basic words and phrases, because the first reason you're not going to understand is that you don't have the words. So at the start you're building up words, getting a feel for the language and stuff like that. Okay, fine, you get that under your belt, and you know some words, you know some grammar, you have a feel for the language. But if you hear a dialogue slowed down, you don't understand it. If you hear a dialogue slowed down, you understand it all completely, but when it's spoken full speed by natives, it all completely goes over your head. Now, this is completely down to a listening problem, and it's that your brain is not used to parsing the sounds of the language clearly. So when you start listening, you just can't listen clearly where words start, where words end, and it's really difficult, right? So the first thing I want to say is that to get used to the new sounds of a language, especially if, like me, you're coming from an English background going to something like Mandarin Chinese, or maybe Japanese or Korean or Arabic, it takes a long time. Even for something like Spanish, when a lot of overlap, it still takes a long time to get used to the sounds and hear them clearly, and to actually be able to pick apart and hear things at full speed. So the first thing I want to say is it's going to take a long time, so don't try to rush it. Now, what I like to do is when I'm ready to start going through native content, I like to pick short videos on YouTube or something like that with CC subtitles. And what I'm going to do is similar to like Andrea said in a comment here. She said she takes 30 minutes to break down only 1 minute of natural paced audio. Now that's fine. I think what I did when I first started is every single day for like a period of a few months, I'd take a video off YouTube with the closed captions and import it into something like Link. Or you can get any video with a transcript and import it, or like use the transcript to help you understand. What you want to do is you want to read and listen through many times, using the transcript to help you understand what was going on. And then when you go from something that was initially, say, like 30% comprehensible, when you go over it many times, by the end of your half an hour or by the end of your hour, you want to get it as close to 100% as possible. I wouldn't get too hung up on perfection, but as close to 100% as possible. So what I normally do is I first put the headphones on my ear and listen a few times with just the raw audio to see what I can understand. After I've listened maybe a few times over, I would then listen and read simultaneously. So there'd be certain things that I would have words that I know, but I wouldn't have been able to hear clearly. So once I've listened through a few times, I listen and read at the same time. And what that does is it allows me to pick up the words that I know but didn't hear clearly, and then get used to pairing up the sounds with the words. After that, inevitably, if you're just getting into native content, it's hard. There's also a lot of words you don't know. So I'm going to go look up the words and find out what I don't know, and maybe make a note at the side, like underline the words, like write them on the side, or do whatever you want. Just make sure you understand what the words are. And then once I've done that, go back to listening and reading at the same time again. This time you've gone over a few times. When you're reading and listening, you should be able to understand most or all of it if you've looked up all the words, because I'm doing this with really short content. And then after that, take the transcripts away, and when you get left with just the audio, what's going to happen is suddenly things are going to seem maybe unclear, things are going to seem hazy, because you've no longer got the characters in front of you, you no longer got the transcript in front of you to look at, and you're going to be struggling to understand. That's fine, that's completely normal, but just keep listening. Go over it 1 or 2, 3, 4 times, and every time you listen, I guarantee you're going to pick up more and more. You already know what the words are because you've just looked it up. You already have a rough idea of what they're being said because you've already read it. So if you just give it time, play it over a few times, you're going to pick up more and more each time. Now, inevitably, there'll be some bits that you just can't quite put your finger on what the words are still. That's fine. For those bits, pause the audio, go back, look at the transcript, maybe listen over to that specific bit a few times while looking at the words, see if you can understand without it, look at it, take it away, and then, try and get a feel for what it sounds like without the transcript, and make sure you know what the words are and you can hear them. And then, when you've done that, go back to listening over a few times. And that's basically the process I go through. It's kind of just going through language dialogues or YouTube videos that, I try to take something from maybe 30% comprehension and eventually get it to like 90 to 100% comprehension for that specific video. Now that's, when I say I do a two-pronged approach to improve my listening, that is one of them. And that, when I'm first getting started, I would call that my focus study time. And I'd like to do that every single morning before work for about an hour. Now, to help me, on top of that, I think that's going to help you get used to parsing the sounds. It's going to help you improve your vocabulary, and it's going to give you confidence that you can actually understand native content. Now, the other side to that is, if that's all you do, I think you will never get anywhere near enough exposure that you need to actually be able to understand native content at full speed on a wide variety of topics. It's just not enough exposure. So once I do that in the morning, and I say I did a dialogue in the morning, if I'm, say, using the Link app, I can use that to listen to the audio when I'm walking to work, or when I'm washing the dishes, and just get it. I've already been through it that morning. I can get a bit of extra exposure and get used to listening to audio over and over again and let the sounds really sink in, help me pass the words, and get really good at passing that specific dialogue. And day 2, do it with a different dialogue, go through the same process again. But then, and this is the important part that I think a lot of people leave out, is when I'm going to be going into my downtime, I'm going to be watching things on YouTube, watching TV, listening to podcasts, whatever you like, whatever you try to do and you enjoy doing, you want to try and do that in your target language. And I feel like this is the thing that I found the most effective, is you have focused study time in the morning, and you also have extensive exposure, just spread out throughout your day, that you're going to be getting as much of whenever and wherever you can, as much as possible. So I think by focusing in on the sounds in the morning and paying attention in detail to these language dialogues and studying them, you're going to be filling in the gaps of your knowledge. You're going to be getting better at passing the sounds of native speakers speaking at full speed, when you're going to be using the transcript to help you, and you're going to be looking in a lot of detail, and it's going to be really where you're going to be activating your brain to try and understand as much as possible. And then on the other side of that, you're going to be consuming as much content as you possibly can, just flooding your brain, letting it wash over you, and just really getting as much listening in as you possibly can. And this, I think, the part 2 is definitely the most important part, because the only way that you can actually get good at listening is by spending a lot of time listening. But I think combined with the focus time in the morning, it definitely accelerates the process. So I think for me, that's what I like to do, the two-pronged approach of language dialogues in the morning every day, and then just getting as much exposure as I physically can. After a while, you're going to get to a point where you can hear all the sounds clearly, you know what they're saying, you can have no trouble hearing native speakers at full speed, but you do have bits that you don't understand, and that is mostly due to vocabulary gaps, and mostly due to bits of grammar that you might not understand. Now, that's not to say that you understand every native speaker in all circumstances with words that you know and grammar that you know, because obviously that's not true. Sometimes you'll be under a lot of pressure. Say if you're in a supermarket and you've got a queue of people waiting behind you, there's pressure on. You've got to come up with an answer quick. You've got to understand what they're saying, otherwise you're going to hold other people up. That's going to make it harder to understand. If it's really windy or there's background noise, it's going to make it harder to understand. If there's people talking in the background, or someone mumbles or speaks really quickly that you're not used to, or maybe a dialect or an accent you're not used to, these are all going to affect your listening. So when I say, you're going to get to a point that you're going to understand, you're going to be able to hear most sounds clearly, it's still not going to be 100%. Even now with my Mandarin, I miss things from time to time. And it's mostly especially if I'm in a noisy environment. But if I'm just watching something on the TV or on YouTube or I'm with friends that I'm familiar with, generally I can hear pretty much everything they're saying, and what I don't understand is a vocabulary issue. Now, when you get to this stage, the barriers in your listening comprehension, I think, are no longer actually to do with listening themselves, it's to do with a lack of vocabulary. So at this point, normally what I would do is, when I took this very heavy, intensive approach of just going through a dialogue many times in the morning, what I then switched to is just reading, and reading as much as I possibly can, because the purpose of this is not to improve my listening per se, it's to improve my vocabulary. So when I'm listening to stuff in the real world, I'm listening to YouTube, Netflix, speaking to friends, whatever, my listening's already got that strong base there that I can just keep on improving and reinforcing and strengthening it through mass exposure. But the thing I'm missing is vocabulary now, and maybe some potential grammar rules. And I think the thing to do then, the best thing you can do, is just read as much as you can. Try and get a solid reading habit in the morning, and just get used to reading every single day, and just letting the language wash over your brain, and getting in a good habit of reading every morning for say an hour a day, and then combining that with watching TV shows and YouTube videos and speaking with people in the night time. I think you're going to improve your comprehension really quickly, and again, the two will reinforce each other quite well. And I think the more of the overlap there is between your listening and your reading content, or your dialogues and your listening content, the more of the overlap there is between these two mediums, the more efficient you're going to be, because you're going to be, say, studying a word in the morning in your dialogues, and you're going to hear it when you're watching a show at the night time, or you'll be reading a book about a topic in the morning, and then you'll watch a YouTube video on the same topic in the night time, and because the vocabulary is the same, you're going to be giving yourself a lot better of a chance to understand it. Now, one thing that I would recommend as well is, if you're into reading and your reading's getting better and your listening lags behind, that's normal, that's like me at the moment, but I think you can also experiment with audiobooks. So for example, this morning I read 2 chapters of a book called 骆驼祥子, which is a Chinese book just about this guy who wants to become a rickshaw driver in 1920s China and dreams of buying his own car. So I've been reading that in the morning, and I've got an app called Himalaya, or like Himalaya, and that's got lots of audiobooks on. So when I'm walking about, say I'm gonna probably, after this live stream, I'm gonna go walk around the block by myself, I'm gonna put my headphones on, I'm gonna listen to the audiobook while I'm walking about. Now, sometimes it's not always possible, life gets in the way, or sometimes I've had a stressful day and I don't want stuff in my ear, I just want to sit back and relax. That's fine, but if you can, then pairing audiobooks with the actual reading is really helpful as well for listening. So let me come have a look in the chat, see if anyone is here. But that's more or less my thoughts on listening. So yeah, Luke, play Catan please, it's 4 PM, hello, notice me senpai. Okay, yeah, that's one of my best friends ever since I was younger. We said we were going to play video games today. I wasn't sure what time we were going to play, but yeah, if no one else is in the chat and no one else wants to ask any questions, then I'm going to hop off and I'm going to go play some games with my friends now. But that's my... Oh, Ryan's on chat with me. Okay, cool. So I'm going to log off now. Thanks for watching, and that's my thoughts on listening comprehension. So I will see you guys in the next video. Peace. Bye.